What happens when the hunter isn't some beast from the woods, but the person in the car right behind you? When the thing you see isn't a trick of the light, but something that shouldn't exist at all. The stories you're about to hear were sent in by viewers, accounts of late-night drives that turned into a terrifying fight for survival. They blur the line between violent crime and paranormal dread, and they'll make you think twice about your next road trip. Story 1. The Spike Strip. This first story comes from a viewer named Mark. For him, a cross-country move wasn't just a new chapter. It was a nightmare that unfolded on the empty plains of New Mexico. Mark had just packed his entire life into a sedan. He was leaving a dead-end job in California for a fresh start in Texas and decided to drive the whole way himself to save cash. The first day was a blur of sun-bleached asphalt. By the time he hit I-40 in eastern New Mexico, night had fallen hard. The sky was just an inky black void, the kind of total darkness that feels like it has weight. After nearly 12 hours on the road, exhaustion was setting in. The highway was straight, empty, and stretching into nothing. It was in that hypnotic, half-asleep state that he first saw them. 2 tiny pinpricks of light in his rearview mirror. At first, he didn't think much of it. On a road this empty, another car was almost a comfort. But 20 minutes later, he realized something was wrong. The car hadn't passed him. It hadn't turned off. It was just there, keeping the exact same distance. A knot of unease tightened in his stomach. He tapped his brakes, just a quick flash, a hint for them to either pass or back off. The headlights behind him stayed put. He sped up to 80. They sped up with him. He slowed to 65. They mirrored him perfectly. This wasn't just another traveler. This was something else. Cold, sharp paranoia started to creep in. He was in the middle of nowhere. No towns, no gas stations, and his cell phone had lost service an hour ago. He was completely alone out here, except for the silent car behind him. Mark's heart started hammering his ribs. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe an unmarked cop car running his plates? But there were no flashing lights, no reason for them to follow him so patiently. He decided to test it one last time and slowed way down to 50. The car behind him did the same. It was like some predatory dance on the empty interstate. As it got closer, he could see it was an older, dark sedan. The kind of car you'd never notice. But right now, it was the most terrifying thing he'd ever seen. He could make out 2 silhouettes inside. The unease curdled into raw fear. These weren't cops. This was an ambush waiting to happen. He slammed his foot on the accelerator. His car roared as it surged forward. He had to get away, find an exit, a town, anything. Behind him, the headlights grew brighter. The chase was on. His speedometer crept past 90, then 100, the wind howling outside. He risked a glance in the rearview. The other car was gaining, its engine clearly more powerful. Pulled up right alongside him in the left lane. Mark looked over. The passenger window was down, and a man was leaning out. His face was hidden by the darkness, but his intention wasn't. In his hands, he held a dark object. For a split second, Mark thought it was a gun. Then, the man swung his arm and tossed the object onto the road, directly in front of Mark's car. Nails glinted under his headlights. A spike strip. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. They weren't just trying to scare him. They wanted to disable his car and leave him stranded in the dark. Pure adrenaline took over. Without a second thought, he yanked the wheel to the right. His tires screeched as he skidded onto the shoulder, kicking up a cloud of gravel and dust. He fought for control, his knuckles white on the wheel, convinced he was about to roll the car. But somehow he managed to straighten out and get back on the pavement. He dodged the spike strip, but he knew this wasn't over. He floored it again, desperately scanning the dark for any sign of civilization. The other car had fallen back, probably shocked that his maneuver had worked. But they were organized and they were patient. They'd be back. His mind raced. What did they want? His car? The few things he owned? Or was it something much, much worse? Sure enough, after 10 minutes of driving at a breakneck pace, the headlights reappeared in his mirror. Just as he started to lose hope, he saw it. A faint glow on the horizon. A sign for a small town called Cuervo. It was little more than a ghost town, but to Mark, it was salvation. He swerved onto the exit ramp, and the car behind followed without missing a beat. He tore through the deserted streets, past abandoned buildings and crumbling storefronts, looking for a police station, a diner, anywhere with lights on. But the town was dead. Panic rose in his throat. He'd led them into a trap with no way out. He made a sharp turn down a side street and saw a flicker of light. A small, isolated gas station, its lights casting a sickly yellow glow on the empty pumps. He screeched to a halt by the front door and laid on his horn. The other car pulled in right behind him, blocking his escape. Two large men got out, their faces grim and determined. One of them started walking toward his car, his hand reaching into his jacket. This was it. He was trapped. Just as the man reached his window, the gas station door flew open. An old man with a weathered face stepped out, holding a shotgun. "Get the hell off my property," he yelled, his voice a gravelly roar. He racked the shotgun, and the sound echoed through the dead-quiet street. The two men froze. For a tense moment, nobody moved. The man by Mark's window slowly pulled his hand out of his jacket. It was empty. He shot Mark a look of pure hatred. Then he and his partner got back in their car and sped off into the night. Mark sat there trembling for a long time. The old man stood watch while Mark called the state police. An officer showed up 30 minutes later and took his statement, but they never found a trace of the men, the car, or the spike strip. Mark finished his drive to Texas, but it was no longer a journey of hope. It was a drive haunted by the memory of those headlights and the terrifying knowledge of how quickly the open road can turn into a hunting ground. For Mark, the threat was very human. But sometimes, the things you encounter on the road aren't something you can report to the police. Sometimes, what you see defies all logic. This next story, from a viewer named Chloe, is about a phantom encounter on a lonely country road that left her and her husband questioning their own sanity. Story 2. The ghost truck. Chloe and her husband, Liam, were on their way home from a friend's wedding. It was late, almost 2 a.m., and they were the only car on a narrow country road that wound through a thick forest. Liam was driving, and Chloe was dozing in the passenger seat. The radio was playing softly, and the headlights sweeping through the trees were hypnotic. Suddenly, Liam let out a raw, terrified scream and slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a halt, throwing Chloe against her seatbelt. Her eyes flew open, her heart instantly pounding. What is it?" she yelled. Liam was frozen, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a horror she'd never seen before. He was just staring straight ahead into the dark. "The truck," he whispered, his voice trembling. It was right there. Chloe looked, scanning the road ahead of them. There was nothing, just an empty ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the trees. No headlights, no taillights, not even the sound of an engine. "What truck?" she asked, confused. "Liam, there's nothing there. It was coming right at us," he insisted, his voice getting frantic. "A massive semi-truck, in our lane with no headlights on. It was going to hit us. I had to swerve." Chloe looked around again, trying to find a rational explanation. Had he dozed off for a second? But he was the designated driver and stone-cold sober. And the fear in his eyes was too real for a nightmare. "I saw it, Chloe," he said, turning to her. "It was huge and rusty. It filled the whole windshield. If I hadn't hit the brakes, we'd be dead." He was completely shaken. Trying to be the calm one, Chloe got out of the car and walked a little way down the road. The air was cool and damp. She looked for any sign of another vehicle. Tire tracks, broken branches, anything. There was nothing. She walked back to the car. "There's nothing here, Liam," she said gently. "No tracks, no anything." He just shook his head. "I know it sounds crazy, but I saw it." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the initial shock turning into a creeping, supernatural dread. The woods that had seemed peaceful just moments before now felt menacing. What had he seen? A hallucination from being tired? Or something else? The idea of a ghost truck was the stuff of campfire tales. Yet, Liam's terror was impossible to deny. He told her more. The truck had appeared suddenly over a small hill. It was an old, beat-up rig. There were no lights on it at all, making it nearly invisible until it was right on top of them. He said he could see the massive grille and even the silhouette of a driver. It made no sound, no rumble of an engine, just a silent, terrifying rush straight for them. He'd instinctively slammed the brakes and shut his eyes, waiting for an impact that never came. When he opened them, the truck was just gone. It hadn't passed them. It had simply vanished. The story sent a shiver down Chloe's spine. She couldn't explain it, but the look on her husband's face told her he had seen something. Liam, still shaken, asked Chloe to drive. She got behind the wheel, her hands trembling as she started the car. As they drove off, Chloe couldn't stop checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the dark form of the phantom truck following them. They didn't talk about it again that night, but the experience left its mark. Liam refuses to drive on that road at night anymore. Chloe never saw the truck herself, but she saw the terror it left in her husband. And she's left with the chilling question of what he really saw on that dark road. A reminder that some stories on the road belong to the dead. A paranormal encounter leaves you questioning reality, but a human threat can be so much worse. A nightmare that follows you for miles. This final story is the longest and most harrowing. It comes from a woman named Jessica and details a terrifying ordeal that started at a motel and turned into a grueling, 10-hour chase. Story 3. The man with the unnerving eyes. Jessica was on a solo road trip from Oregon to Colorado. She was an experienced traveler and loved the solitude of the open road. After a long first day, she pulled into a small town in rural Idaho well past midnight. Exhausted, she decided to get a room at a cheap roadside motel. One of those old, single-story places where the doors open right onto the parking lot. The neon sign flickered, and the place felt neglected, but all she wanted was a bed. She checked in and parked right in front of her room, number 12. As she was getting her suitcase from the trunk, she got that primal feeling of being watched. She looked up and saw a man standing in the doorway of the room next to hers, number 14. He was just standing there in the dim light, smoking. But there was something about his eyes that made her skin crawl. They were wide, dark, and seemed to bore right through her with a weird intensity. He didn't smile or say a word. He just stared. Jessica felt a jolt of alarm. She quickly slammed her trunk, grabbed her bags, and hurried into her room, locking the door and sliding the chain across. She looked through the peephole. He was still there, his eyes fixed on her door. A cold dread washed over her. She thought about calling the front desk. But what would she say? That a man was looking at her? She told herself she was just being paranoid. She drew the curtains and tried to get some sleep, but every creak of the old motel sent a jolt of anxiety through her. The next morning, she woke up early, eager to leave the creepy motel behind. She packed her things and opened the door. The man's car, a beat-up silver sedan, was gone. A wave of relief washed over her. It was all in her head. She checked out and got back on the highway, feeling silly. About an hour later, she stopped at a gas station to fill up. As she was pumping gas, a silver sedan pulled in. The same one from the motel. Her blood ran cold. The man with the unnerving eyes got out. He looked right at her, and a slow, sinister grin spread across his face. This was not a coincidence. He had followed her. Panic set in. She screwed the gas cap back on, jumped in her car, and peeled out of the gas station. She glanced in her rearview mirror. The silver sedan pulled out right behind her. And for the next 10 hours, he followed her. He stayed a few car lengths back, a constant, menacing presence. She tried everything to lose him, speeding up, making sudden turns, but he stuck to her like a shadow. She was too scared to pull over or lead him to a police station, worried he might do something desperate. She was trapped in her car, her tormentor just feet away. Hours passed as they crossed into Wyoming. The landscape changed, but the silver sedan was always there. At one point on a long, straight highway, he pulled up alongside her. She risked a glance. He was staring at her with that same empty, intense gaze. But now he was talking, his mouth moving silently behind the glass, a horrible, predatory smile on his face. Then he started laughing, a silent, maniacal laugh that chilled her to the bone. She pushed her car faster, her hands slick with sweat. She had to get help. She saw a sign for a rest stop and made a split-second decision to pull in, hoping to find other people. The rest stop was eerily empty. The silver sedan pulled in right behind her, parking so close she couldn't back out. She was cornered. The man got out of his car holding a metal baseball bat. He started walking slowly toward her car, tapping the bat against his palm. Jessica was paralyzed with fear. She fumbled with her phone, her fingers shaking too badly to dial 911. The man reached her window and tapped on the glass with the end of the bat. "Liar," he said. His voice a low rasp she could somehow hear through the glass. He tapped again, harder. "Liar." He kept repeating the word, getting louder and more agitated. "Liar, liar, liar." Then, with a roar, he swung the bat. The driver's side window exploded, showering Jessica with glass. She screamed, shielding her face as he swung again, smashing her side mirror, then the back window, all while chanting that one terrifying word. The attack snapped her out of her fear. She slammed the car into drive and stomped on the accelerator, jumping the curb and speeding across the grass toward the on-ramp. The man ran after her for a few steps, screaming before giving up. She glanced in her mirror one last time. He was just standing there amid the shattered glass, his face a mask of pure rage. She drove for miles, wind howling through her broken windows, tears streaming down her face. She finally managed to call the police and tell them what happened. They told her to drive to the nearest town and wait at the station. When she finally made it, she filed a report, giving them his description and the license plate she'd managed to see. The police were sympathetic but said it would be hard to find him. They never did. The man with the unnerving eyes disappeared back into the American West. But for Jessica, he never really left. He lives on in her nightmares, a reminder of the hidden dangers on the open road, and how sometimes the most terrifying journeys are the ones where you're being followed. The open road promises freedom, but it can also be a stage for our deepest fears. For Mark, Chloe, and Jessica, a simple drive became a battle for survival. Their stories are a chilling reminder that when you're alone on a dark highway, you are vulnerable in ways you can't prepare for. The line between a normal trip and a living nightmare is as thin as the asphalt itself. Be careful out there. You never know who or what is in the car behind you. Thank you for watching. If you want to hear more stories like these, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe, and until next time, try not to think too much about what's waiting for you in the darkness.